All right. Hello, this is my curriculum proposal. My name is Lucas Kilmer, and I'm going to do a proposal for a physics classroom. So, ironically enough, the name of the proposal or the type of curriculum that I'm going to be using is called the Physics Classroom. It's a virtual curriculum and an additional website for additional resources that has kind of moved its way into more of a curriculum base and has really fleshed out a lot of really great ways to scaffold on top of a lot of additional curriculum. So it has some dual purpose, but we're going to talk about the really curriculum side. But originally it was kind of a simulation and laboratory focused digital resource. Great for students, you could send them there, or as a teacher, you could use some of their labs or virtual labs as great options. They've expanded a little bit. They've added a lot of digital lessons and some virtual stuff on like a YouTube page, very similar to a Khan Academy with practice problems, lessons, and lectures. And then they also have a lot of really great supplementary resources, once again, virtually overall mostly, but they do have some additional. Beginning though in this fall, they're going to be adding a pre-constructed curriculum side, which is kind of what I'm going to focus on. And this is going to basically be a full-on curriculum. So this is the curriculum for the physics classroom that I'm going to talk about. A little bit of a different version, not a pre-made, more popular curriculum style, but something that I thought was really interesting. So I am going to use, they have a few different options for their curriculums. I'm going to choose the algebra-based physics version. They have a general physics and they're making a calculus physics, but we're just going to go with this one. And I'm going to be comparing it to, at least initially, to the NGSS EQUIP rubric. So those are the standards that we're going to reference. So going through the rubric, I chose three different standards to kind of focus on. There were many of them, and I believed that reading through that they followed a lot of the great ideas for them, but I chose one from each different standard set to kind of encapsulate a little bit of all of it and talk about how it was kind of an all-encompassing nature in this curriculum. So NGSS 3D standard number one, the unit coherence. Looking through, there are 14 different units, I apologize, that go along with this curriculum, starting all the way from intro to science, talking about the scientific method, data analysis, all the way down into light, refraction, E&M, and all that fun stuff. But overall of this, they do a very good job of connecting between the units and internally within units. A lot of the stuff is scaffolded on top of each other to build into your final set. So a lot of, especially in Unit 1, they do a lot of building on the different aspects of taking information in and analyzing data and then writing it down. And then the final bit to it is to have a notebook that has a lot of all of the different unit labs that they've talked about as one final assignment. The other part that I like to talk about for the second standard NGSS instructional supports was the differentiating instruction, which is standard E for that. The Khan Academy YouTube style page that they have is a phenomenal resource. It has a lot of different demos, has a lot of different lectures, and it's actually going to connect to one of the big ideas that I have that we talk about moving forward. But there is a ton of great information for student supported differentiation. So a lot of different ways that they can look up things on their own and maybe review, or if you have a student who happens to be virtual bound, which is something that is becoming more common, those are things that they can work with. And then the last one was the scoring guidance in the monitoring NGSS student progress. Most or all of the major assessments that the students will go through have pre-made scoring rubrics that are very detailed and outlined in terms of what students need to have and then how it needs to be incorporated. So those are kind of the big reference standards that I wanted to talk about. But big ideas overall, big idea number one is very hands-on based. So if we look at page 58 of our Upgrading Your Teaching, we talk, one of the major ideas was after hooking student learners with various attention getters, students can sustain their attention by asking them to predict what they think the curiosity, simulating sight, sound, objects, all these different things into a lesson. So from day one, if you look lesson plan all the way down here for number 4, day 1, they're working on a lab. This is a very common theme that happens in each beginning of a lesson, but day 1 of unit 1, they're already going into a lab. They get to look at different phenomena. They get to hands-on work and get a general idea overall what the unit is going to be before even really starting. So a lot of on-your-feet activities. There's teacher demos, there's video clips. It's a really good way to connect students into the lessons right away. So that was a big first connection there. Number 2 is the differentiable nature of this. So a lot of the lessons talk about it when you go through, you can say, we're going to talk about speed and velocity today, or talk about distance and displacement. And my personal preference is to create those on my own, but they offer a wide variety of different pre-made Khan Academy style tutoring series lessons, which you can see are pretty in-depth at 12 minutes, 18 minutes. So they're very present there, giving kids a lot of different ways to visually look at demonstrations and talk about experiments, which is a big part if you look on page 100 of our Upgrading Your Teaching. So this YouTube channel is a huge additional resource that is just already created along with this, so you can utilize it to whatever amount you want. If you like to make your own videos, you may not use it very much. If you do not have the ability to make certain demos, they probably have them there for you. So it's really awesome way to kind of get that innately into there without having to do a lot of extra work. So just general differentiability is already there and present. Big idea 3, when we talk about revisiting assignments and rebuilding predictions, a lot of the assignments that you go through, this one is day 5 of Unit 1, talks about checking in with practice and then also reviewing homework assignments that are already done. If we look at page 127, regularly incorporating methods by design teaching can cultivate growth mindsets while deepening student understandings, increasing skill proficiency, and enhancing the quality of their performance. So allowing them to work and then fail and then relearn is a huge aspect, and this already incorporates them consistently within the units. This check-in idea, which is what I use, we call them whiteboarding, where the kids will work on problems and then we'll reassess together. You can do it that way, or you can do them in small pod groups and then reassess them individually as you walk around. Either way, you're still giving students the opportunity to practice on their own, and then you adjust and see how they do. Or you can go in with the reviewing, so they have homework assignments, and then you can review them as a class as a whole. So already baked in, a huge aspect for relearning and helping ingrain that kind of information in there. Big idea number 4, rubrics and outline. Talked about it with the original standards, but if we look at page 120 of our Upgrading Your Teaching, W in the where to simply reminds us that as a teacher, we must make the learning goals evident to students and kind of cut in there a little bit. But overall, has to be evident, has to be present. So this is a huge aspect right here. Relationship and goals. This is the original outline for the student notebooks. And this tells them exactly what they need to have in there, exactly how they're going to be graded, and what the point set is out of there. So coming with these pre-made curriculum rubrics is huge. And it's a great way for them to know what's present there. We also have a link in the entire rubric here. This is only just a small section of it. Big idea number 5, building skills and notebook etiquette. Overall, we want students to learn our information. However, the big goal is for them to be able to take life skills and then be able to utilize them and transfer them into different situations. That can be found at page 104 of Upgrading Your Teaching. So not only do we want them to learn our material, but these skills can be taken and used other ways. So not this skill, specifically notebook skills, great for other science classes. If you're in chemistry or bio, labs are going to be important to work with. But then this can move forward into a more career role. If you need to take data, look at analysis, report that to your superiors. These are huge things that are talked about right from the get-go. These both reporting and guideline instructions are in Unit 1, Day 1. So it's one of the first things that we talk about. So from my perspective, I already incorporate some of these into my current lessons, but I really like the fact that they focus on doing these in every single unit and they're present multiple times in every lesson. So hands-on, different kinds of labs. There's virtual, and then there's also the hands-on versions. So there's tons of consistent practice. There's reviewing materials, always going through, looking at problems, letting them practice on their own, reviewing it, not just letting them do it for the sake of doing it. There's a reason behind it. There's multiple forms of labs, like we said, virtual, hands-on, tons of concepts for them to look at, and they build on top of each other, as well as they provide a great access, or will provide a greater access to different forms of media, like we show with the YouTube Khan Academy page. I make video lessons, I go through and I send them as well, so they're always present for the kids to work with, but having different versions of those lessons and lectures is a huge way for innate differentiation by the students themselves. So overall, I think incorporating this will not only improve my classroom, but also improve the way that the kids can learn and get to choose how they get to learn. So some citations on what we went through. We talked about the book. What is curriculum was referenced a little bit, and then I also brought in the actual physics classroom website. Thank you very much for joining, and I hope you got something out of this curriculum proposal.